this is pretty important. Lived experience of Christians is the principal moment of God's self-revelation, and theology is a second movement. This is a key idea of Gutierrez Roman Catholic theology. So the Thomistic idea that there's the natural and there's the supernatural, and they're very neatly distinct and tidily separated in a sense. That's the wrong question. Liberation theology, they're asking, are you a follower of Christ? What are you doing today? What are you doing in your society? What are you doing in your community? Saying, are you followers of Christ? Are you pursuing Him? Are you taking up your cross? So at this point, we haven't really hit a right or a wrong or a good or a bad yet. We're just noticing a change in the discussion. The discussion, it sounds differently. So when Gutierrez begins to talk about grace, thinking back to a more medieval theology of grace, it's more like an item to be distributed in the sacrament. The idea that Roman Catholics are stereotyped as believing that you can do whatever you want as long as you go to confession and go to church. That's the stereotype. And this is sort of addressing that stereotype in a way. No, there needs to be actual action in the world, and your life needs to look like Christ's life. So far, not so bad. But salvation in this sense is not such an individual thing. It's a social thing. Salvation is not how many kids did we save at summer camp this year, but it's a social thing. How much of the society is still suffering in poverty? How much of the society is still oppressed? The integration of human history and divine salvation history is key, so that today when we ask, or when we say, God loves you to the poor, it must be said with actions more than words. That's a liberation theology idea. You don't say, God bless you to the man who needs bread, and then good night, and don't give him bread. You're to give him bread. That's not so bad. That integral salvation is the idea that there's a heavenly history and an earthly history, and they're not so distinct. They ought to be integrated. That's sort of a here and now integral salvation. Here's Jesus multiplying loaves and fish, an image of Him feeding the poor and alleviating the suffering.